Music for All is proud to sponsor Bandstand. At Music for All, we're about providing positively life-changing experiences. Join us with your marching band at Bands of America or with your concert ensemble at the Music for All National Festival. Students can audition for our honor ensembles or attend camp at the Music for All Summer Symposium, featuring the Sweetwater Director Academy, an amazing week of professional development for directors led by Dr. Nola Jones. Learn more at musicforall.org.
Romeo Music is the leader in audio, video, music, and lighting technology for educators. With a combined nearly 200 years of experience, Romeo Music's subject matter experts understand the struggles that face teachers in today's music classrooms. With a laser focus on educational technology, Romeo Music provides a turnkey solution, everything from audio cables to on-site training. To learn more, visit www.romeomusic.net.
Hello, and welcome to Bandstand, the official podcast of the Tennessee Bandmasters Association. I'm your host, David Aydelott, and I hope you'll join us on a journey through the past, present, and future of bands in Tennessee. We'll delve into the rich history of Tennessee bands, uncovering the hidden gems and legendary figures who shaped the state's band landscape. We'll survey the present, where you'll meet the movers and shakers of today, gaining insights from their expertise and experiences. And we'll gaze towards the future, exploring the exciting possibilities that await Tennessee's school bands. On this episode, I speak with Dr. Albert Nguyen from the University of Memphis. We talk about his background, his parents' incredible story, his journey as a student, his time at the University of Memphis, and how his hobbies impact his profession. Dr. Nguyen also gives advice to young teachers. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Dr. Albert Nguyen. Okay, Albert, you're from Arkansas. You went to Van Buren High School, is that right?
Yeah, Van Buren High School Pointers.
The Pointers? What kind of mascot is that?
Well, tell me about it.
At least you got the Tigers now. Like, that's a mascot upgrade from Pointers.
Yeah, I love my high school, but I certainly believe that the mascot doesn't instill fear into anyone.
No, definitely judgment,
Yeah, perhaps.
So what was your high school band experience like?
Oh, man, it was awesome. That was my tribe. That's when I really discovered that the people around me were heavily involved in shaping my direction. And I also realized that my band directors were investing in me, and not even only the band directors. I mean, even the band parents. And so, that's when all of that came together for me in realizing that my path was moving towards a more artistic route instead of something that would have been a little more academic, which is what I was planning to do. But best.
Wait, what does that mean?
I was probably the typical Asian expectation of being a physician or a dentist or, a scientist or something. I mean, that's kind of what I was thinking I was going to do. Like, I even remember in elementary school writing this long essay to enter a summer camp at our community college. It was like a medical camp because I wanted to cure cancer. And so I labored over that essay. It was intense, but didn't get in. That's okay.
I think we need that for the Bandstand files, if you still have a copy of that.
No, it'd be interesting to see. I have no idea. I remember writing it over and over and over again. And I was a kid. I didn't know that I could have just written it a draft on another piece of paper and then transferred it. It was on the same application. And so when I turned in the application, it looked like I'd eaten it because it had so many holes in it from all the erasing. It was just, I remember that. It was a formative moment in my life.
What grade was that again?
I don't, I think it could have been fifth grade, I think. Fourth or fifth grade, because I think I was encouraged by my teacher, Miss Davis, to do that.
Yeah, that's cool. It's funny. It's a great memory. Thanks. So more of your tribe in high school, like your high school band friends, where did their experience take them? I mean, are they
Are they doctors? They still live in Arkansas? I mean, where do
Well,
they all end
they're
up?
like my closest friends. They're doing outstanding things. Like in high school, like for instance, my friend Aaron Horn. He's teaching recording technology in Minnesota.
Huh.
And if a girl that I dated, we were together for a really long time. I would also consider her obviously a really great friend. Now she's an outstanding teacher, in the Fayetteville area. My friend Daniel, he's involved in city government. So it's just really outstanding to see all of them do things. Now, we're not in touch nearly as much. In fact, with Aaron, yes, we're on a text thread. We're both photographers as well. And so we talk about those types of things. But like Jennifer and Daniel, we keep up with one another through Facebook. Once in a while, we'll send happy birthday messages.
Yeah.
But I'm certainly proud of them for all that they've done. It's great.
When did you know you were going to be a music major?
I think I was a junior in high school. I vividly remember not taking calculus because I wanted to take music theory. And it wasn't offered at the same time. But I, it was about messing with the credits, right? Because as a senior, I only wanted to go half day, so that then I can go to work or do whatever.
Spend the rest of the day in the band room, right?
Well, that's exactly what happened, actually. That's 100% what happened instead. But my junior year, I think, is when I decided at the end of it. And so I strategically did not take calculus because I wanted to leave room and space. And I remember that because I remember at the time my teachers being a little upset with me about not doing it because I had the aptitude for it. I had a great grade in pre-cal. It was fine. It was easy for me. But I vividly remember saying to her, well, I'm going to be a music major. I don't need calculus for this, but I do need music theory. And so that's what I'm going to take.
Yeah.
She respected my decision, and that's how it went.
That's how it went. One of those paths in the road right there. Forks.
Yeah.
Forks in the road.
Many forks.
Now, your parents, do I understand this correct? Your parents were Vietnamese refugees in the 1970s?
Yeah.
Can you this might be a whole other episode, but
well, it could
are you
be
comfortable talking about that? I mean,
okay. No, I talk about it often, and I like to talk about it because every time I talk about it, I'm reminded of how lucky I am, honestly, when it really boils down to it. And then I'm always inspired by them because, we often complain about how hard life is. And then when you learn about someone else's hardship, it puts things in perspective, but the story's beautiful. I just need to find someone to write an opera about it. And this really could be, its own episode, but I'll sort of, you can nudge me along and how you want to go. But yes, they were refugees. They came over, I think, around 1975. The dates are a little fuzzy. And what I know is they were in the United States on what we call Black Friday, the day that Saigon fell. And here's the interesting part is my dad and mom were not married when they came over here. My dad was a Catholic priest. And so who was in love with my mom. See, opera, it's going to happen. My dad was in love with my mom secretly. He was also a beloved priest. Like I've met my father's friends and they've talked on and on about how wonderful and how charismatic and how influential he was as a priest. And it's great to hear, he was also a great teacher, a scholar, all of that. And so as things started to go south with the war, it was very clear that my parents' family, my dad's side, my mom's side, they all knew each other, by the way. They needed to at least do some things to protect themselves. They got word, rumors that the communists were coming. They were going to invade the cities, and they just needed to get out. So the original plan was actually to just hide and survive and then sneak back in and then live. So they didn't intend in any way to disappear and come to the United States. And this is what I find is really interesting is that, again, no internet, rarely any news at this point, right? And so all of this is word of mouth, and they just had to trust that the information that they were receiving was real. And so on rumor, on information that they were hearing, hearsay, so to speak, my parents, separately with their families, sort of hatched this plan to go to one of the port cities, get on my now uncle's fishing boat, and then just hang out at the sea for a little while, and then maybe come back. They heard rumors that there were American Navy ships that were picking up refugees and then taking them to safety. Now, again, mind you, these are rumors. Like, it's not like you got picked up and then you come back and then you tell everybody.
Or you sign a contract, right? Or like,
right. You're literally hopping on a boat and you're going out there, and you are hoping that in the big sea out there, somebody is going to come pick you up. Now, my guess is that American soldiers were telling people of this. I have no idea how they knew. I haven't dug deep into where the information has come from. But, long story short, my parents got on a boat with their entire family, and they went out to the sea and hung out there for a little bit. They were afloat for maybe a couple of days. They were the lucky ones. And then they got picked up by a U.S. Navy ship. And then on that ship, my mom says they were given a choice. The soldier said, you can come with us and then we'll take you to a refugee camp and you can be safe, or we'll leave you here if that's what you want and you're going to die. But if you come with us, you can't take anything, nothing. We're going to sink your boat. Yeah, you can't take no bags, nothing, just the clothes on your back and get on the ship. So that's what they did. And watched
I'm getting
Vietnam.
stressed listening to this story.
Yeah, well,
I can't even imagine what
right.
this is.
Yes, and that's what I think about. It's like their faith in God, their desire to survive, all of that played such a deep role in one decision: stay or go. And so they decided to go. And then they go through the system that the government had set up so that we could intake refugees. I believe from there they went to the boat went to Hawaii, and then from Hawaii they flew to the Philippines, and then they also ended up in Guam. So they're in the Philippines and they were in Guam, and then shortly after that they made it to Fort Smith, Arkansas.
I was going to say,
Barling.
How are we getting to Arkansas?
Barling, Arkansas, because right in Barling, there was at the time, I believe it was an Army camp, an Army base. And that's where so many Vietnamese refugees were brought. And I so they were brought into the barracks, and then they were brought into sponsor programs. And then from there, they started to assimilate into the American population. And that's the short answer right now of how they got here. Now, in between all of this is that wild and crazy love story. My dad's a priest. And because of my dad's religious connections, he was also responsible for getting a large number of people out of the country. He also spoke English. And so he was employed by the Fort Smith school districts to help with the Vietnamese children in the elementary schools. And so he was involved that way. And this whole idea of being in love with my mom wasn't going to leave him. So he worked with the Monsignor Galvin at Immaculate Conception in Fort Smith. Worked with Monsignor to, I guess, relieve himself of his priestly vows, and that's what he did. My dad's friends secretly went up to see my mom because my dad was sponsored by an Italian couple, William and Laura Gentili, in Van Buren, which he lived with them, and that's what placed him in Van Buren. My mom and her entire family, they were sponsored by a convent in the Chicago area, and so they stayed in a home that the convent rented for them. But my dad was probably drinking a lot, probably really depressed about his life decisions and didn't know what to do about it. His friends visited, saw that he was pretty in pretty bad shape, and then they went to go visit my mom and said, your boy's in really rough shape. You need to go see him. And then from there, the story is really blurry. My mom and dad don't talk much about that, and that's fine. They can be.
They are entitled to their private moments. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. But shortly after that, they got married. I was born, and then the rest of our family started. That's how we ended up and stayed in Van Buren, Arkansas. But yeah, there are 6 kids, 3 boys and 3 girls. They moved into government housing. We lived in, I think it was an 1,100 square foot home, all the way through high school. My parents worked 2 jobs. My dad during the day, my mom at night, and that's how they sort of funded our education and built a life for us.
But they also, if they did that, then that means there was always one parent that was dedicated to be with you.
Yes.
So they sacrificed their own time together for their children.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My dad often said that he didn't eat lunch because if he ate lunch, that meant one of us couldn't. So
you're right. This is an opera.
Yeah. Now it's so, wrapped up in all of it. Like I look at my parents and the things that they did for themselves, for us. And it's, for me, it's a model of sacrifice, of dedication, of discipline, of responsibility, of integrity, of faith, and so I've, as far as those things are concerned, they are my compass.
Yeah.
And I often look at it that way.
I mean, just the courage that they had to demonstrate in that. I don't even know how to describe. I can't describe it. I'm not qualified to describe that sense of just the wisp of an idea of a better life, to get on a fishing boat and hang out until something happens.
Yeah. Well, that just tells you how bad the life was, right? Like when you're in this place, when you're so desperate that any inch, any ounce of hope is what's going to drive you forward. I mean, that's intense. But the reverse of that, I think that what that does is it allows us to really understand the power of hope, and how that can drive us to do great things. And that's certainly why I work as hard. It's for the hope of a better life for my family. It's the hope for an impact in the field that we've chosen to live in. It's the hope for creating something for our students that's going to make them better. It just looks different. My life isn't threatened, but sort of the kernel of what makes it all happen, I think, is still the same.
Yeah.
And that's hope.
Yep. That's incredible. That is a great story. And I'm glad we're able to share it. I'm glad people can learn this because I've always had so much respect for you anyway, but just hearing this from you is just dialed it up a lot for me, Albert. So.
Well, I didn't do any of that. I'm a product of all of that.
I hear you. I hear you. Okay, so from Van Buren High to Arkansas Tech for undergrad.
Yeah.
I've never heard of Arkansas Tech except for I know that my friend Albert went to school there.
That school is a secret. It's the best kept secret in the country. I went there because that's where my high school band directors and middle school band directors went. But that wasn't the sole reason. I knew that I wanted to be a band director, and I started, looking around, and this is not to be disparaging on any institution in Arkansas or anybody who went to another institution. That's not what I mean by this statement. It's just the people that I was exposed to and the people that I looked up to, they all happened to go to Arkansas Tech. And they revered that institution and told me a lot about what that institution did for them. So to me, it was sort of a no-brainer. I applied for one school and then I did it. And as I was sussing out what I wanted to do was when I discovered that, just to back up a little bit, the schools that I wanted to go to, I was never going to be able to afford to go to. Like, I wanted to go to Northwestern and study. I wanted to go to Eastman. I wanted to go to Juilliard. Like once someone says, I want to be a music major, all of a sudden these schools popped in your mind. But, then I looked at the bottom line and what that was going to mean financially. I'm like, nope, no, not going to happen. We've known, all of the Nguyen kids knew from the very beginning that if we were going to go to college, we had to do it on the backs of our own academic effort or extracurricular effort. My parents told us that they can do all they can to support us through high school, but that's it. That's all they would be able to do financially. And so we depended a lot on government assistance, on scholarships, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Just, much like most people do now, college certainly isn't cheap. So that put me in one place, and that was Arkansas Tech. And luckily, they thought that I was worth the risk, and allowed me to have enough money to survive there. So, like most people, I lived off of student loans and the scholarships, and worked a few jobs here and there, and spent a lot of time in the practice room. But I would say what really formed me in that school were definitely the teachers. They invested deeply in me. And I feel like I learned a lot of craft there. My college band director and mentor, Hal Cooper, is still, giant. The man, the expression has forgotten more than I know. Definitely. I learned how to tune a band. I learned how to balance a band. I learned how to think about repertoire through the third clarinets and the second trumpets and the third trumpets. He was the first person to challenge me on what good music was and what bad music was. And continually put me in positions that were just outside of my skill, so that I would grow. And that man means a lot to me. And when I think of Arkansas Tech, I think of not the school. I think of those people.
And that, yeah, that's great. And then you taught for what, 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, I 4 years.
In South
Morrilton,
Conway
Arkansas.
School District? Yeah.
Yeah, the South Conway School District. It was, I believe it was back in the olden days. It was sort of like this consolidated district, but the school itself was Morrilton. I was the high school band director, and we had an aligned curriculum. So we also taught at the middle school and at the junior high, and it was great. It was me, my buddy Mark, and Vicky, and it was a terrific time of my life.
Do you remember your first day?
Yes. There are 2 days that I remember. I remember the night before the very first band camp ever. It's vivid. I remember how the band room smells. I remember how it looked. I remembered that, the first time these students were going to meet me, I wanted the band room to be perfect. I wanted it to be clean. I wanted the rows, the chairs, perfect, all the instruments in the seats, the forms, everything. They just walk in, they sit down, and then they do the thing. And I remember looking out thinking, gosh, I wish I had my camera. I would have taken a picture of that. Just stood on the podium and saw everything set out. So I remember that very vividly. And then I remember the very first note they played. It was god awful. It was, they came in, everyone was so excited.
Bless them.
Was so good, pumped. They sat down, we talked, we read the handbook, we talked about the rules, like, okay, let's play a concert B flat. It was the most horrendous sound I'd ever heard in my entire life. And at that moment, that's when I realized, oh, this isn't going to be easy.
Yeah.
This is not easy at all. I'm going to have to figure this out. And I started chipping away at it. But yeah, I do remember that. Whew,
It's a good thing to remember.
Yeah. It was a humbling experience. When you're in college, and Arkansas Tech was a great school. It had a fantastic band, an amazing marching band. I mean, we played repertoire that was just, in hindsight, probably well beyond the ability of the players. But no, it wasn't, because we played it. I mean, we didn't play at anything. We played it. It just, I would assume that most people wouldn't have expected that from that school, I guess, is what I mean by that.
I'm hearing a theme, though, in this conversation, though, Albert. It's this idea of something just being on the outside, or on the edges of what's possible, and the striving towards that. I mean, you talked about that with your experience as an undergrad. You're talking about this now when
Yep.
you were as a first beginning teacher. Like, how important is that for folks? Because it seems to me that sometimes young directors in the area, when they feel that if they're struggling, then they're not good at the job.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be comfortable with that distance between where you are and where you want to be.
Yeah.
How did you work through that? How do you talk to young teachers or your undergrads at Memphis about how to sort of cope with that feeling of it being uncomfortable?
Well, I define that feeling. That's the first thing I do, is when you start to feel pressure or when you start to feel some kind of dissonance between comfort and stress, that is what learning feels like for me. There is such a thing, obviously, as too much stress and too much tension. But you don't get stronger by being comfortable. And so when I talk to undergraduate students, when I set personal challenges for myself, that's 100% what I do. I take a beat and I recognize that the moment that I feel stressed about something or something that I want to do makes me uncomfortable, that's when I realize that what I've come up to is the threshold of a new opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to decide either to take it or not. And most of the time I take it because I can't say no, I take on too much. But ultimately, that's what I do. I define for students that uncomfortable feeling is the window to their next stage, the door to their next stage.
Yeah,
And they just got to go through it.
and basically just shines a light in the dark for them.
Yes. Yeah. And I think as long as we can define what something is and then we can start to understand it and then you can start to deal with it. And that's I think that's why I view it that way. Of course, I'm sure there's a lot of research on it now, but I've just known that about myself. You're right, all my life. And it kind of comes together now.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And then speaking of stretching yourself, you went from there to Texas at Austin for master's in DMA.
Yeah. Talk about stretching.
Definitely. You just took a beat right there.
Yeah. Well, I almost went home.
Hmm.
I at some point in my undergrad career, I realized that first I wanted to be just the best band director in Arkansas. Not to win anything, but just like stretch myself to be that good. And then as I started working on those things, I realized, well, I think I want to do college. I think that's what I want to do. It's because I want to play harder music. I wanted to be a teacher of teachers. I wanted to influence sort of this band world that pushed and poured so much into me. And so that probably happened within my first or second year of teaching high school and middle school. And then I was mentored by Hal Cooper, and basically he said, well, before you do that, you need to get really great at being a band director. So just focus on that and then see what happens. And so I did. About 3 years in, I was like, okay, I think I'm not the best band director in the world for sure, but I feel like I'm at a place so that I can handle more knowledge. That's what I was aiming for, and I paid off my car. And so I wasn't going to have a big financial burden.
Practical aspect to this decision.
Right. There was a little bit of that too. But yeah, applied for schools, went to Texas, got super lucky to go there. And the excitement of being there lasted about halfway through the first week. And then when I got through the first week was when I realized that there was so much I didn't know. They call it imposter syndrome now, but they didn't call it that then. I didn't know anything about it. But I ended up at this place where I thought that Jerry Junkin was wrong in choosing me. I didn't have the capacity, and I'm going to have to work really hard to even fake it. Um, and that was a hard realization. Like I even got to December, and I've never been this far away from home. Just missed my family so much, and just missed being comfortable. I was wildly uncomfortable the entire time. But my sister Tessa, she sent me a really cool bag, and in that cool bag was a family picture. Because the last thing that I did before I left for Austin was my brother Anthony got married, and it was this beautiful family picture that I still have of all of us in front of the altar. And again, it was my mom and dad and my family and what they all did it for. And that photo represents, for me, it was a reminder that other people have done much harder things and turned out okay. And for me, I took it as a sign that I just needed to keep working harder. And so I did. I had one set of notes that I took from the class, and then I had another set of notes to remind myself to look up all the things that I didn't know. So I just hustled, man. I just kept going. And then by the time I got to the end of my first year at Texas, I realized, okay, this is fine. I found a new pace. I found some extra bandwidth, and then I just kept going. And then from that point on, literally, I just lived for every single opportunity I could find that was going to make me better or make me uncomfortable or, put me in relationship with someone who was so vastly better than me so that I could learn from them.
And then you finished your DMA and went straight to Memphis from there, right?
Yeah. Got super lucky and landed a job. There were 3 band directors at Memphis at the time. They were looking for the third position, director of athletic bands. And I applied for it, got it, planned a wedding, went to Europe for about a month, worked on all of the Memphis things that I needed to work on, and then landed in Memphis sometime second week of August, maybe first week of August, and then hit the ground running with summer band camp. It was cool.
And then you became director of bands in 2011, 12, somewhere in there?
Yeah, somewhere around there. I was doing the marching band thing for about 3 years. And then both of my colleagues ahead, Nick Holland and Craig Williams, they found other jobs and moved. I moved into the interim position as director of bands. The following year, they did a national search. They liked me, so they kept me, and the rest is history.
We're so glad they did.
We've been here. This is my 17th year in Memphis.
So, Albert, would you just talk for a second about your experience as director of bands in Memphis?
It's hard to sort of boil it all down, but I'm going to do what I can. Coming into the position, just like many things in life, I assumed that I knew what I was doing. And then when I stepped into the position, I realized there was so much more that I didn't know. So sort of the job for me worked in multiple different phases. And I honestly feel lucky enough to be able to go through all of these phases in one place. And so the first thing I had to do was just figure out how to do the gig. How do I work with the graduate students and the upper division undergraduate students in the wind ensemble in a way that was really going to push them towards their careers and their goals. I thought I knew, but once you really start digging into it, you learn that maybe you don't. And so the first phase really was figuring out how to do the job. But in the end, what it really was trying to figure out what Memphis is and what the students actually needed. I thought that what I was trying to do was figure myself out, but then I realized within the second or third year of the director of bands position, I needed to figure out what those students needed to be fully motivated to do their jobs. And that was, for me, the best part. Was I discovered then the heart of the city, the heart of the institution, and fell in love. Because I'll be honest with you, when I first came to Memphis, I didn't intend to stay here. I just figured it was going to be the first job, and then we just keep on moving on. But no, that wasn't the case. And then the other
Wait,
thing that was important.
hang on a second.
Yeah.
Let me back up and ask a question. What was that the kids needed to be motivated? I had a conversation with a young director the other day about student motivation and, that sort of thing. So what did you discover about those students that they needed from you?
I needed to figure out what they needed to believe in themselves. That's one of the things I needed to do. And then the other thing that I needed to do was to figure out how much was enough of a challenge for them, repertoire-wise, responsibility-wise, to continue to move the needle forward, but not devastate them as students. Right? It was that was what I was trying to figure out. Where is their cruising speed, and how far in the RPMs can I push them as students so that they can continue to rev harder?
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge that made that so difficult at the time was that, in the tops of the sections, you had master's students and doctoral students. Specifically, I'm talking about the wind ensemble here. And then in the middle and in the bottom of the sections, you had 3 different levels of ability. As a school, we were building studios, we were building our institution, we were recruiting our butts off, we were working on world domination, right? And so what made it hard was we had different populations of students, and we had to galvanize ourselves and align ourselves with a role with a goal that made sense. And so sort of threading that needle through repertoire and through responsibility, through goal setting and expectations, that's the part that I had to figure out. And what I learned, honestly here, David, is that it's different for everybody. I couldn't expect the bottom of any specific section to perform as well as the doctoral student that was sitting principal. I mean, that is wildly unfair. But what I could expect from everybody is 100% of their best effort. And so I had to understand what 100% of that effort looked like for each student. So expectations for each of the students was that they were going to do it as hard as they could all the way through. But for each kid, it looks different because they brought different things to the table.
And I would imagine you would say that that's arriving at that point with literature selection and all the decisions that a director of bands has to make about the program is so critical to maintain that sense of balance where everybody feels, where the kids that are sitting at the top of the section that are doctoral students, they feel like their time is well spent. And the kid that's sitting last chair at the bottom of the section feels like they can contribute, like they're a part of something, like they all feel good about it. I mean, it's just such a razor's edge. How did you get to that point where you could sort of operate in that narrow little scope?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I got there. And sometimes if we were really too close to the sun, to be honest.
All right, Icarus.
Right? Yeah. So to look at it, from the extreme, when we were too close to the sun and perhaps the ensemble was overpicked. I edited the parts. You do what you do. Like, something that I often say is, if you can't play it all right now, you still have to find a way to play that contributes in a positive manner to what's happening in rehearsal. And if that means editing a rhythm to make it a little more attainable, or cutting a specific bar and then moving on, then that was fine. We worked hard at trying to make sure that what a student was doing was going to contribute. As far as the leadership side of it, I relied heavily on the principal players, on their leadership to model what the great sounds were and what the musical expectations were. But they helped us with sectionals. They did a lot of teaching on the side. A lot of these graduate students, they're planning to be college professors somewhere. And so they needed the experience of leading their sections. And in some instances, they were also planning to be professional players in an orchestra, in a military band. And again, they needed those experiences. So it was all part of trying to figure out what a student needs and then create an environment for them to be able to do that, so that when they leave, they've done the thing before. And so I knew that the principal players, they were getting a lot of rigor, in the other repertoire that they were playing in their lessons. And they were getting, some of them were playing the orchestras around. They had their chamber groups. And so if I looked at a student's music education holistically, which is how I choose to view it, then it made it a lot easier for me to think about what they were getting in band, what they weren't getting in band, because I also knew that the rest of my colleagues at the University of Memphis were providing these other opportunities that were also making the students better. And so it made it easier for me to maybe not choose Maslanka's Fourth Symphony because I desperately wanted to do it. And I knew that maybe two players in the top of each section could do it, and then everyone else would suffer, right? So that's why I didn't do those things. But Maslanka's Fourth Symphony became a carrot that I had in my mind. Okay, well, they need to be able to do the following. So let's just keep picking repertoire to grow the group so that we can get to that skill, and then we can play it. It took us about 10 years, but we got there. Group effort between what happens in the studios and constantly throwing a rep in front of the wind ensemble. So I think, to really answer, because I think I rambled and danced all around your question.
In a wonderful way.
How do I get it to how do I get to motivate those students is I think each person is motivated differently. The goals stay the same. We just have to figure out what it looks like for them to get there.
Yeah. And there's got to be like a shared vision of what the community is. Those kind of things have got to be communicated. Yeah. We're all different. Yes. We have different interests. We have different, you may be a non-major playing in the wind ensemble, but we have to agree in this moment that we're all together for this thing.
Right.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about with this? I kind of want to ask this question, but what are you most proud of in your term as director of bands?
Oh, what am I most proud of? I think what I'm most proud of is together with, Will Plank, and now Wilker Augusto and Susan Bingham, I really feel like we've built sort of a family, and then you add into that the rotating cast of graduate students. Now we have Aaron Duke and JP Mora. We have created this beautiful environment where everyone is rowing in the same direction, and then when a student comes into our band program, they know what to expect, not because I've told them or that Will has told them. They know what to expect because that's what the students are telling them, and things are in place. The sort of overall feeling is what they enter into, and then they find ways to contribute to that. So I would say that's what I'm proud of. It feels like this perfect little environment that you can get into.
It would have been very easy for you to say, oh, we played at CBDNA, or we played the Maslanka 4, or whatever. I mean, it would be very easy for you to give one of those kind of answers, but I love that you gave the answer about something that's sort of in the ether.
Yeah. And those things are great. Yeah, we have done those things. We've done all of those things. And there are a few more things that I still want to do, but I don't ever want it to be at the cost of the community. And that's what's important for me. I'm very ambitious. And there are times where I'm too ambitious and I end up overworking people, myself, the students. That happens regularly. And I think when I find myself in those positions, there was one year where the repertoire was just intense all the way through. And at the end of the semester, it was fumes. The kids had nothing left. And literally, I just changed the entire concert. I was like, okay, you're not giving anything anymore because I've just beat it out of you. I'm so sorry. We're going to shift gears right now.
I've been there on the high school level.
Yeah.
It's not a fun place to wake up to. No, and you're like, I screwed this whole thing up.
It's not because, right. And that's exactly how I felt. Like I screwed it all up. They hated coming to rehearsal. And so I think about that a lot. It's just really important for people to come along with me instead of being forced. And that's why I think always I'm focusing on community before I focus on anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wrote this question down beforehand, but just, I mean, you've talked about it. Maybe there's another point to make about it, but just how important are valuing those relationships in the university setting, at South Conway Middle School, or, like how important those relationships, and when did you learn that? Is that part of your background?
Maybe, I mean, I, growing up in a Vietnamese household, what I was taught, uh, was, respect people, respect. I mean, it's not always Vietnamese, but
Yeah.
my parents modeled that, regardless of how angry someone makes you, you respect them, like so on and so forth. But somewhere down the road, I discovered though that, middle school band, high school band, college band, people don't get paid to do these things. The scholarship that a student gets, it's nothing really when it comes down to it. And they could be making more money not being in your band program, not going to your marching band rehearsal. They could do a lot more things that would be more beneficial to them personally, perhaps financially. So when it really comes down to it, then all a student has to give is their time.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That is the most valuable thing that they have. And so if I don't value them and their time, then they're going to stop giving it. And that's where that is why community, I think, is important to me.
Yes.
And so I think about that. That's why the rehearsals are planned down to the second, is because that's it. They've chosen, they've elected. Wind Ensemble gives me 2 hours on Monday, 2 hours on Wednesday. I better make it count.
That's a great answer to that question, by the way. Thank you.
Thanks.
Got a little verklempt right there. First of all, I just love a good schedule anyway. So,
right.
How do you go about programming for your wind ensemble? You've talked about this so far in our conversation a lot, but just let's put a fine point on it.
Yeah. Oh, well, it looks like a whole bunch of different things. One of the things that I think about is, what does the ensemble need to really grow artistically? I think about what Cornerstone, Masterworks, any of the students who are coming through the ensemble, what they need. And then, honestly, outside of that, I try to pick stuff that I know that they can play and what's going to challenge them. And then there's also what I need to grow as a conductor and as a musician. And so the way that I pick repertoire, it has to sort of, it's like a Venn diagram, and each of those things are there, each of those purposes are there. And then it's just, in some ways it's painful to try to figure out. In some ways it's really easy. I think it all depends. But there's, we do 3 concerts a semester. And what I realize now is also how things work. I program the repertoire according to the academic pace for the students. In some cases, you would think that it would make sense to save just the hardest and most difficult repertoire for the end of the semester, but that actually doesn't work that way for Memphis. Because at the end of the semester, they're doing juries, they're writing their papers, they're preparing for their recitals. It's very likely that they're going to be stressed out, And so what I end up doing is the middle concert is the one that becomes the kitchen sink concert, where they get all the really tough stuff for them. The first concert tends to be, fresh, open, exciting, new, to get them pumped up for the semester. So those are the things that I think about. I don't know if this answers your questions very well.
No, it does, because
it's sort of, it's based on what they need, what I need, and what's available in the ensemble as far as abilities go.
Yeah, I think it tracks with your idea of preserving that community, that you're not going to overstretch them. Stephen Covey talks about the goose that lays the golden eggs, and if you ask the goose to work an extra 5 minutes longer every day, at some point the goose gets sick,
Yeah.
and so just finding that place where you can, you're considering the students' needs musically and emotionally and that sort of thing.
Well, and the other thing is I have long-term goals of what we want the ensemble to be able to do, there's repertoire out there to be performed that we still don't have the skill to play. And, it's not an ego thing. It's not because we have to play this, because that's what all the other great groups are playing. But I believe in the transformative power of great music. And when they have the skill to access that music, oh my gosh, it's going to change them. They don't know that yet, but it's going to, right? And so those are my goals. It's kind of repertoire based. Boy, it would be nice to be able to play Circus Maximus someday. It would be fantastic to be able to play all of the Mazlanka symphonies, Stravinsky piano concerto, symphonies of Psalms. We're not quite there yet, but we will be. We will be.
So this year, Albert, you transitioned into the role of the interim director of the School of Music. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
How's that going?
Well, just like anything in my life, the new thing becomes the hardest thing I've ever done, right? And it is. I mean, this is definitely the most difficult thing and the biggest challenge I've taken on. And I have, to be clear, I have no intentions of leaving the world of band directing. I am a musician. I am a conductor. I am a band director, and the interim role for me, I feel like is the best way for me to help preserve the community at the School of Music. Make sure the bills get paid and allow the business to happen so that my colleagues can do their job and so that the students can continue to have an education while we search for a new director. Those are my true intentions on it. But boy, oh boy, have I learned a ton of things, and a lot of what I have learned, I would say, has to do with trusting people, setting more clear boundaries, and not becoming overly emotional about hard decisions. I think when I really pull away from the things that were big challenges for me, it all circled around those three elements. As a band director, I wanted to do all of the things by myself. And when it's one band program and not a theory program, a history program, a music musicology, a music, commercial music, and all of the other programs that the director has to help manage, I can't make all those decisions. I shouldn't. I don't have the knowledge for it. So really relying on people to do their best and encouraging them to do their best and setting up that environment so that they can actually do their jobs. That's been exciting. And then realizing that I have more bandwidth than I thought. That's more exciting. And then knowing that my personal life is more important, actually, than the rest of the things that I do, because I knew that I was going to overwork or stress out a lot. So I sort of put in my mind that I was always going to make sure that family was first. That was very helpful in creating some boundaries. There's so much more for me to unpack. I'm only finished the first semester, and I write every morning and of late because it's the new year, right? A lot of what I've been writing about is what I've learned, and I know that I haven't even scratched the surface. I haven't thought about it enough. But I would say so far those are the three things: rely on other people, set boundaries for sure, and it's been great.
What is it Brene Brown says? Clear is kind.
Oh gosh, yes.
When it comes to those hard decisions.
Well, right. And that's, I think of all of the things that I was worried about, it was that, that third point, the sort of the emotional pain of having to make hard decisions. Someone's got to make them. It has to happen.
What do you want folks to know about the School of Music at Memphis?
Oh man, I want people to know that whatever it is that you want to do in music, we can provide for them. That's what I want people to know, and that you will find your tribe at the institution, and that you will find your path. I think what makes it difficult, most people will say this, is like, we're not the big crazy state school that has thousands and thousands of people in football stadiums. Like it doesn't fit sort of what media pushes as big time college, and that's okay. That's fine. I'm very happy with what we do as an institution. I'm proud of what we do as an institution. And I'm so surprised by how much we can do. It's like we're a very big, smaller school, and I'm very proud of that.
What's it like for students that are non-majors in the ensemble?
I think it's awesome. Even a non-major can find something to do. There's not an ensemble that in all of the areas there is an ensemble for someone to participate in. We even have commercial combos. Like if you don't read music and you play guitar, but you can play a mean guitar, fine, we'll put you in a commercial music combo. If you sing a whole lot, and again, you don't read music, but you want to make music with other people who want to do that, we can do that. If you want to audition for the Marine Band, sure, we can do that for you too. And that's what I love, is I love that a school of our size allows us to be so agile, and we can really focus in a whole bunch of different areas.
And there's a really strong music theater program as well, isn't there?
Yeah, well, it's fantastic, and what's even better is when you look at the collaborations that we're having, like for instance, the School of Music is collaborating with the theater program this year, in the brand new hall, and so the hall sure belongs to the School of Music, but in the end, it really belongs to the community. And so it allows us to do even bigger and better things, bigger and better collaborations. We just collaborated with Opera Memphis to put on Rake's Progress. Never in my life could I imagine that our school would put on an opera by Stravinsky, and we did. We weren't playing at it. We knocked it out of the park. It was fantastic. And, and the students were working along professional opera singers, professional opera director. The musicians in the pit were our musicians, yeah, it was great.
I wish everybody could see the smile on your face right now.
Man, it's fun. It really is. And I think, I guess too, I don't think everyone understands how many horses we have under the hood, and if I were disappointed about anything, it's that I wish I could just get into other people's mind and help them understand how awesome it is. But you have to be here. You have to look at it. You have to see it. And, that's a focus for me when I move on back to the director of bands position, is take everything that I've learned in this new position and seeing how the sausage is made in all of the areas. Like, I've been able to really zoom out. I always knew that this was a great school. But leading it for a year makes me realize that it's a gem, an absolute gem. And I just need to be its biggest advocate.
I love that. Albert, somehow you have 25 or 26 hours in a day while the rest of us are at 24, because you're the director of bands, you're the interim director of the School of Music, you have a wonderful family, but you're also a photographer, and you also have other culinary interests. Can you just talk about those things that make you even more interesting? And maybe a little bit about how photography pairs with your experience as a conductor.
Oh man. So I do this thing once in a while where I take a photo every day. Like, and for me it's two things. One, it's just the discipline, the ritual of doing it. And then the other is being open-minded on how the consistent, thoughtful act of doing something every day will change your perspective. I've just completed my third time of doing this. And the first time was just the act of doing it. The second time was where really things came together. I chose to do something in all in black and white and only in black and white, not knowing what I was going to learn from it. What I discovered was that in order to shoot black and white, you have to always look for contrast and you're looking for shapes. And when I started to do that, about a quarter of the way through, I realized that I started to study my scores in that manner. I was really looking more deeply at the form of the piece, the ratios of the sections, and I was constantly looking for contrast and trying to create contrast. And so that is 100% how sort of my black and white project worked for me, was just looking at it in that vein. And so, and what it did was everywhere I looked, I was looking at form, I was looking at contrast, I was trying to find patterns. And so just priming my brain to think that way forced me to look at scores in that way. This year, and then during the black and white project, I had no idea, but I also documented the entire pandemic, which was a crazy thing as well. So this year, I wanted to really stretch myself on looking at how light impacts color and try to really look at just color in general. And then a secondary thing was trying to just find really cool candid moments and not think about so much and just snap a photo. But where it started to show up now is in looking at the score, I'm thinking even more deeply about, how does this clarinet color in this scoring combined with the saxophones that are also scored into it, how do I make that really beautiful and unique? What is the composer really asking me by looking at the tessitura, looking at the dynamic range, looking at what I know those instruments sound like in that register? And can I get down to what that true color and timbre intention is? That's what this most recent project has done, is forced me to look in the corners more deeply and try to find more subtle interpretation. Yeah.
This is another podcast also. We need to have Albert Part 5.
Whatever.
I mean, it's a lot.
Whatever you want.
It's a lot. We're up on an hour.
Hobbies,
I want to ask you so many questions, but we have an hour, and
I can give
just
you
interesting.
I can give you as much time as you need.
I'll just have you back on.
Yeah,
I've got to go to my farmhouse.
Yeah. But dude, I mean, the hobbies and the other things, they're important, and I don't think about them as things that I have to insert into my day every day, because I don't. I don't know if I believe in a work-life balance.
Thank you. Adam Grant talks about this too.
I don't believe in a work. I don't. And it's not being disparaging to anyone who is trying to achieve that. I will say this, for Albert, there is not a work-life balance. There are seasons in my life, and there are plates that have to spin. There are parts of my life that are related, interconnected. And what I aim for is for all of these things to function in harmony, like right now. And then I communicate that, like Amy and I both know that this academic year is going to be really hard. And so we're forgiving on a lot of things. She knows I'm going to work later. But she also knows come July 1, when I'm done with this, I have a full month where maybe I'm not working nearly as hard. And so that's kind of what I think about it. I think much more on a long range timeline. And I think about sort of scaling my effort as needed on a much longer continuum. And that's kind of how I look at it. My cycle does move sort of in an academic cycle, And so there are ups and there are downs, and I just make sure that everything is moving in harmony. I don't look for it for the day.
Okay, I got to wrap this up, but I will ask you this question. What will you say? I asked this for everybody. What would you say to young directors, Albert, that are struggling, that maybe you're making a choice about whether they should stick in the profession or not?
I've thought a lot about this, and because it makes me sad. It makes me sad to see directors step away, because of burnout. And this sounds such like a artiste thing to say, but I think this might be maybe the case. I don't know. I mean, for me, I'll use myself as an example because I think that's the only fair thing to do. I've certainly suffered from burnout. In fact, maybe I'm already there. But when I do, I have to analyze what it is that's burnt me out. And it's always tasks. It's work. It's never the time that I spent making musical moments with our students. That doesn't burn me out. That actually charges me up. And so when I think about burnout, then is I have to zoom out and think, okay, what are the things, like in the literal sense, what are the things that have sucked out so much energy that I can't give any energy? And what are the things that give energy? And how much of the energy givers are actually in my life? And so that's what I think about is, when I feel burned out, I assess what has taken the energy, and then I try to look for things to give it back. And it's always for Albert anyway, it's because I'm not doing anything that is personally or artistically satisfying. That is why I take pictures. That is also why I'll spend hours listening to music and not saying anything. That is why I will get up at 4 a.m. and babysit a brisket until 6 p.m. It's those things that give me energy that then it allows me to pour that energy back into my students. And so what I would say then to directors is that you've got to find a way to recharge your batteries, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to look like a 2-week vacation. It doesn't, honestly. And I think that's the part that people don't think about.
Yes.
Work for 30 minutes, take a 15-minute walk. Work for 2 hours, take a 20-minute break and doom scroll. Something like these moments can happen throughout the day. We shouldn't be sitting at our desk for 4 hours at a time.
Yep.
Just and plan for it. And I do. There are times where I just can't stand to sit in my office anymore. I'll go up, and it takes me 20 minutes to go from my office to the coffee Starbucks in the middle of campus, and then come back. Those are great walks. By the time I get back to my office after that, I'm ready to tackle the next block of stuff, and I don't feel mad and crazy about it. And so, I find moments like that all day long, and I protect those moments fervently.
Yep.
So
I would like young directors to, just tagging onto that a little bit, back to the tasks part of the conversation. I think sometimes I see this with young directors, that they seek out those tasks because they feel like completing a checklist of things like organize the keys or redo the library or things like this gives them a feeling of being effective, maybe more than spending 30 minutes on score study. Yeah. But lean in maybe more to the score study, because the long-term benefits of that are going to be much more profound for your teaching and your experience with your kids in rehearsal.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't organize the keys.
Yeah, no, but you know what? You have to prioritize the things that only you can do.
Yeah.
And then delegate the things that you can't. I think that's a lot. That has a lot to do with sort of the community that we've developed in the band program at Memphis. Albert does the things that only Albert can do. And Will does the things that only Will can do. And Susan does the things that only Susan can do. Now, we can do each other's jobs. That doesn't mean that we should, And so in the case like yours, organizing the keys or making sure the uniforms are in place. Yeah, those are time sucks. Those are time sucks that are important. Now, but is it important for you to do them? Or is it more important for you to find a student organization or empower a student and allow a student to do that? And then at the same time, the 2 hours that you would have spent organizing the band uniforms, you can actually spend studying the scores. Or maybe there's a break there, or maybe it's the bus forms that only you can do,
Yep.
I think about that a lot. And I learned that from Carol Rakestraw. She was the first band admin that we had. And she's a surrogate grandmother for my kids. She would say this all the time. She'd see me stressed out and she'd lean over and she'd say, Albert, what are the things that do the things that only you can do? And you give me the things that I can do. It's great. She's awesome.
Got to have somebody like that in your life for sure.
Oh yeah.
Band parent or yes. Well, Albert, this has been great. I have enjoyed this so much. I knew I would. I've always loved talking to you.
I love sitting in the room with you too, even if it's virtually. We got to get together again sometime.
Agreed.
Thanks for listening to Bandstand. Bandstand's mission is to build a stronger, more unified band community in Tennessee by fostering meaningful conversations about the past, present, and future of school bands in our state. If you have topic suggestions or need to get in touch with us, email us at tbabandstandpodcast@gmail.com. Your input is important to us, and if you have a topic you'd like to discuss about the past, present, or future of Tennessee bands, please let us know. Again, that email is tbabandstandpodcast@gmail.com. Right now, we're broadcasting on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, so please subscribe, review, and rate Box 5, please. And if you find something interesting or helpful, please share this podcast with your friends. Bandstand is proud to be sponsored by Music for All and Romeo Music. See you next week.